Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight, where we shine the light and talk with business leaders from all over the world who are here sharing their input and wisdom, expertise in wisdom, so we can all grow together. I'm your host, Heidi Schalk. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. We're so excited to have you here. Can't wait for you to meet my guest today. And let's get started. So without further ado, I want to welcome Doug Cornfield with Disability Dream and Do. So welcome, Doug, to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always good to get on a podcast and get to talk to this audience. So it's great.
Oh, I'm excited to have you here. And I really want to learn more about your organization. It sounds really cool. What you're doing is pretty amazing. So Doug, can you share a little bit about yourself, about Disability Dream and Do, and your role within it?
Yeah, so it really goes all the way back to my childhood from a perspective. My father was a world-class athlete. I wanted to play every sport, wanted to be in the majors, wanted to play basketball, wanted to run track, all those things. Wound up playing basketball in college, gave that up to focus on my track career, and went from a small school national championship to a full scholarship at the University of Georgia to run track there. And so there's, a huge background. I was around pro athletes my whole life, met people like Jesse Owens when I was a kid, and, just all sorts of things. Bruce Jenner when he was Bruce, and all that kind of fun stuff. And I just didn't even really think anything of it, as far as my future. And then back in 1998, I had my fifth child in Georgia. We were living in Georgia at the time, and he was born with neither arm and one leg shorter than the other. And all of a sudden, you're thrown into this disability world. He was a preemie. He was only 2 pounds, like 13 ounces, weeks and weeks and weeks in the hospital. And then he got meningitis, just all these things that you just weren't. There's no book for that kind of stuff. There's no book for a situation like him. And during that time, my brothers offered for me to come up and join them at a large financial firm to partner with them in Corning, New York. And so I took that opportunity and came up here. Most of my family was in central New York. I would have never left the Atlanta area other than for family. And so I moved, and my little son Gideon was just about a year old at that time. And as it would be, I was studying for my Series 7 during this time, and I was flying back and forth from Corning, New York to the Atlanta area. And during that time, I'd spend like 2 weeks down in Atlanta, 2 weeks back up here, 2 weeks down. And I was studying in coffee shops mostly. I'm a coffee shop worker. I go from coffee shop to coffee shop even today. And here I'm studying at this coffee shop, and I pull up a newspaper. So that's how long ago this was. I pull up a newspaper because you don't even see newspapers in coffee shops anymore. And I read this article about this man who had polio and played professional baseball on his crutches. And I'm like, who is this? What is this? This doesn't make any sense. His name is Dave Clark, and he had gotten the Heroes of Sports Award. It's a huge award that was awarded to him at the Atlanta Congress Center, and all the big Nike people were there, all this kind of stuff. And I found that out, of course, much later. But I'm reading this article, and in the article, it talks about him playing professional baseball on crutches and that he was from Corning, New York, where I was actually in the process of moving to. Now, if you know anything about Corning, it's a glass town. It's a big Fortune 500 company, but it only has about 10,000 people here. So I'm going from Atlanta, where there's 10,000 people an inch, to Corning, where there's 10,000 people in the whole town. And here I'm reading an article about a man that grew up there in the sports world. And as it would be, Dave had just finished his coaching career at this point, and he had moved back to his home more permanently, living in Corning. He was actually coaching internationally in Sweden right before I met him. And so I asked my brother, Kurt, I said, who's this Dave Clark guy? And he said, well, I know Dave. I'm like, well, how do you know Dave? I don't know Dave, but my brother had been in this area for a while. Actually, they wound up doing a baseball camp together in 1983 at the YMCA, we found out later. And so here I'm intrigued. I'm like, I got to meet this guy. And Dave was coaching a baseball team about 20 minutes from here. So it was a pro baseball team. He was a part-time pitching coach. He traveled so much, he wasn't willing to go on the away trips. So he just stayed here at the home trips at that point in his career. He had a little girl at the time and was married from a Swedish woman. And I went to a baseball game with the family, and lo and behold, after the game, I went around the dugout, met with Dave, and I said, hey, I'm Doug Cornfield. I think you know my brother Kurt. And he said, yeah. And I said, and I had my son Gideon in my arms. So he saw that Gideon had some limitations. It's pretty obvious, especially for somebody that has limitations. You notice it more so. And I asked Dave to meet me after the game, and he had some press conference things he had to do. The press was meeting, and I was waiting there for him. And we passed. I got a cell phone. I said, "Hey, I'm going to give you a call." I did. We met for breakfast, and the one thing I can remember about that breakfast meeting on Market Street years ago, because we try to piece this together now. I mean, we've traveled all over the country together at this point in our lives. And I was asking him questions, and the focus was, what did your parents do? I wanted to know what his parents did, and then he after the breakfast meeting. This is the point where Dave was just starting to transition from full time being able to walk on his crutches to start using it because it was getting more difficult to him getting around for post polio. And so I'm sitting here looking at this guy, and I'm like, how in the world did he play professional baseball? I mean, he can barely walk. From a perspective, it's getting real hard. It was getting real hard for him at that time. And we just struck up a friendship. He became a client of mine. I started to get to know his story. I dug in deeper. The thing that I was going to say about that breakfast meeting is that when he got done that breakfast meeting, he stopped me and said, Doug, nobody's ever asked me questions like you're asking me.
Mm.
Because I was coming from a whole different perspective. I wasn't asking him what his pitches were at that point. I wasn't asking what teams he played for. I was asking him, well, what did your parents do when you were in grade school? What did what happened here? What happens when you wanted to play sports? How did they make that happen? And I was asking him those types of questions. And we struck up a friendship, had him over for dinner, started asking him more questions. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what didn't you do? I mean, it's such an amazing story. So we really, part of this whole journey is that I met Dave Clark. And if you're hearing this podcast, so here I'm a father that was around athletes my whole life, got to a decently high level in sports, and I'm meeting a guy that played 10 years of pitching on his crutches in professional baseball, played in the Phillies organization, played in the Pirates organization, played with a team that's getting more famous again right now, the Indianapolis Clowns, which was Hank Aaron's original professional baseball team. And then he bought that team, and then he's telling me all this stuff, and I'm like, then he scouted for 6 different major league teams, and he coached in the Olympics, and he won awards at the White House from President Clinton. All these things that I'm like, okay, slow down, because it doesn't make sense to me that you have accomplished all this kind of stuff. And so bit by bit, I pushed him. He became a client, pushed him to write a book. And then when the markets collapsed and Merrill Lynch merged with Bank of America, that's the big firm that I worked for, Merrill Lynch. He merged with Bank of America. I told my brothers I was going to do something different. And I wound up partnering with Dave shortly after that. I got him his first speaking event in Orlando, because it was like, okay, what do? You got to create all this revenue. What do you want to do? And so I'm thinking, we're going to do movies, because this is a movie. If this isn't a movie, nothing's a movie. Okay. We're going to do documentaries. We're going to do books. I came up with children's books. I came out of the children's entertainment industry that I worked for in the 90s in Atlanta. And so I'm putting all this stuff together in a business plan. And Dave and I met while I was doing that business meeting in Florida. And in the breakfast meeting, he says, Doug, this is all great, but what I really want to do is I want to run more sports camps for kids with disabilities, which is something he'd been doing since the 70s, with VA hospitals, group homes, YMCA for children. So this was nothing new for him, but he wanted to do more of that. And so he'd already been doing a program in Florida at Fort Myers with the Twins organization at the spring training facility. Small groups at that point. They would get about 20, 25 children and young adults with disabilities. The whole team would come out on the field. They're on this, beautiful pro field with these pro players doing a softball. It was a softy ball, baseball station driven camp. Kids would have a blast. They'd feed them afterwards, hamburgers and hot dogs, whatever. And I got to experience one of those with him when we partnered. And then he said, Doug, this is what I want to do more of. And so quickly it became, okay, that's fine. And then we started realizing this costs a lot of money. How do we fund it? Dave and I had committed to never charge a dime for any of these events. And then all of a sudden, we started getting other offers. The Mets organization, another one with the Twins, one in Nashville. And again, we had committed to never charge. And so it just became, okay, how do we fund this thing? So I became more of a marketing wing in the business sense than running the events. But, what we really, really do great in this long-winded intro that I just gave you is that Dave and I, and then we added another Dave, which we can talk about later. We run sports camps for kids with disabilities. That's what we do. And we do it completely free for the families. And they get shirts, they get hats, they get to be with these pro players. We feed them, they get tickets to a game. Sometimes I get them in the radio booth. We have awards that we give out, certificates we give out, all these things that we do, but we create moments of magic for these children, these families. And then I get to, as a father with somebody with a disability, I get to meet these, if you're watching, I get to meet these two men on to my left here. And I get to introduce them to families and saying, you know what? As a quote of Dave Clark, he says there's two types of dreamers. There's dreamers that dream, and there's dreamers that dream and do. And we want them to dream and do. We want them to explore their potential. And then I get to present these two men that are saying, you know what, you can do it. Let them find out. Don't hold them back. And so these messages are extremely powerful. At the same time, they're getting to play with professional players on a professional field.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. And it wasn't too long or anything. It was perfect because it really opens our eyes to a lot of things and the door to your journey. And, many times we're scared to take action, and every step we take leads us to our next adventure, even if we don't know what that is. And I'm sure years ago when you were in Atlanta, if somebody said to you, oh, in so many years, I don't know, how many years ago was this?
I moved in 2000.
Okay. So 26, 25, 26 years.
So I met Dave Clark almost 26 years ago when I was reading that article.
Wow. So somebody would have told you 27 years ago that you'd be doing this now. I'm sure you would have been like, absolutely not. It wasn't even like a thought in your mind.
Wasn't even on the radar.
Yeah. Every decision you made, starting with, I'm sure your son definitely.
Sure.
Yeah. He started the journey, which is a beautiful gift in itself. Right. And you asking those questions of him that nobody asks, because I think for a lot of us, there's fear there. Well, we don't want to ask about it because we don't want to shine the light on it. They know they have these disabilities, what we call disabilities. For him, he created this amazing, incredible career, inspirational on top of it. And the lives he's changing because of it is really fascinating. And I can only imagine what his answers were when it came to what did your parents do? Because he's also where he is, and a lot of it to do with his parents not limiting him based on the disability, right? Yeah.
They didn't hold him back. That's the issue. I mean, there was one story that he tells often to make his story crazier. He pitched for 10 years in the minor leagues, and then he bought a team and he played for another 5 years on his own team playing first base and at the professional level. But when he was younger, he wanted to play ice hockey. Well, he couldn't even skate. He's virtually got no use of his legs. He can't skate. His mom's like, "What are you gonna do?" And he says, "Well, I'm gonna go play ice hockey with my friends." And she was a little apprehensive about this one. She's like, and Dave, I don't want to say it. Dave was a good-looking guy, let's just say, and he had a beautiful smile, and his mom loved his smile. And she said, "Dave, you got to make a deal. I'll let you play as long as you don't lose any teeth." She was more worried about him losing his teeth and his smile. And he said, "You got a deal." And he kept all his teeth, and he still has his smile with him. But he played ice hockey goalie. He had to do it differently. He couldn't even skate, so they had to drag him on the ice. I have pictures of his teammates dragging him on the ice and pulling him into the goalie, and it's just so many stories like that. And you're like, he just didn't let his limitation hold him back from something he wanted to do.
Yeah, that's incredible. There's so many, and I hope parents listening, and just even if you're not a parent, just think about yourself, how we hold ourselves back, and we don't even have these limitations that he was handling. And he was like, "I'm going to go full force. Like, nothing's going to hold me back." And he had that team around him. Surrounding yourself with the people that believe in you as well is really important. And of course, as parents, we believe in our children, but we're also nervous that they could get hurt, right? So a lot of us will hold our kids back without meaning to, because we're nervous for them getting hurt or them failing. I love this journey and story of highlighting his parents and saying like, no, you can, like, let's give you every opportunity we can. We don't know how it's going to happen, but let's figure it out. And I think that leads a lot into business. We don't always know where we're going or how we're going to do it, but let's figure it out. And if it doesn't work, we fail. Okay, no big deal. That's just one lesson that's going to teach us how to okay, let's learn from that and move forward. And I love that you're giving these other kids now the opportunity to, regardless of whatever disability, quote unquote, they have, they still have dreams. And there's no there's no reason why they shouldn't go after them. And so it's disability, dream, and do. And so there's 3 Ds there, but as you said, there's another D in your organization.
Yeah, Dave, and Doug. It didn't start out that way, but I couldn't just have one amazing Dave. I had to get 2 amazing Daves. There's a kind of, it's like one of those things where the stories don't even make sense. But somebody sent me an article about Dave Stevens, my other Dave, and there was a phone number attached to his website or something, and I just picked up the phone and I called him, and I think I caught him when he was driving. And I start talking to him, and he's living in Connecticut, and I'm telling him about Dave Clark. He didn't know about Dave Clark, and Dave Clark didn't know about Dave Stevens. And I told Dave Stevens said he's doing a little speaking event in Connecticut. And I said, well, you mind if I just come out and meet you? And so we spent like 2 days together. And there was a really unique situation there where Dave's daughter had some trials and tribulations, and she had to go to an eating disorder home in Wickenburg, Arizona. This is Dave Clark. And there was an issue where she had taken a care dog that she had with her, and it wasn't working out. And it was a problem because now that dog didn't have a place to go. And Dave's family's in Florida. His daughter's in Wickenburg, Arizona. They just dropped her off with their care dog named Hope. And Dave Stevens was overhearing me on this phone call with Dave. He said, hey, what's going on? And I said, hey, because he heard the word Wickenburg. And I didn't know it at the time. But Dave Stevens, the new Dave, guess where he's from? Wickenburg, Arizona.
What are the odds?
I don't know what the odds are, but it's small. It is small. And so we were able to arrange for one of Dave Stevens's Wickenburg high school baseball friends to get the dog. I flew out there, picked up the dog, flew it home to Florida from Arizona, or flew it back to Dave's house from Arizona, because it had all the certificates and things like that. So I just took this little mini pincher is what it was. It sat on my lap, scared to death the whole time. And of course, when I got the little Hope home, we'd become pretty good buddies at that point. And of course, when you have a dog like that in a plane, everybody's they just love it. And she was so good too the whole time. And of course, I put the biggest smile on Dave's wife when I brought that dog Hope back to Florida, because now the dog was safe and it didn't have to stay in a kennel unknown and all those kind of things. So it was pretty amazing that Dave Stevens, here I'm meeting him for the first time, and Dave Clark needs help in Wickenburg, Arizona. And voila, we were able to pull all that together. And so that's when you start wondering, what? And now I wish they weren't both named Dave, because for marketing, it makes it very difficult. And even we're marketing right now, as part of our marketing plan, a new plan of the dugout movement to create revenue for us, because it's really, to do these camps, we have to create revenue. If we don't create the revenue, you can forget it. And we create most of the revenue through our businesses, speaking events, product sales, this and that, sponsorships. We do have a nonprofit wing. But most of it, we prefer just creating it from a business perspective, giving somebody something that somebody wants, selling it, and then we just pay ourselves and then pay for these camps, and make them free for everybody. So Dave Stevens, was added to that list. And then the dugout movement, when the marketing firm from Australia named SoulU decided to name the dog Doug, I was not real comfortable with that, because I'm the Doug and these two guys are really the celebrities, the Daves. And I said, well, if we're going to do a Doug dog, we need to do a Dave and Dave dog. Now, the problem is, what are we going to name the Dave and Daves? So we're still, kind of bunching that around. One of Dave Clark's nicknames growing up was the Dude, so that's a possibility. And Dave, we might call it Davey, and we could call it Dave and Davey. I don't know. We might even have a contest. I thought maybe we should call Dave Clark Dig, and then it's Doug and Dig and Dig and Doug, and I don't know. So we're still trying to figure that out. But we're going to launch Doug the dog, both digitally and in a full end, high-end collectible plushie dog, and it's going to be great. So I
love the plushie too. The dugout dog.
Yeah, it's spelled D-U-G, so it is spelled different than me. So this is my last. I've been telling people I have to own this, and this is my last opportunity to be cute in the world. And maybe I should show my baby picture when I was cute, actually. Sitting in my mom's lap.
Well, I love the story. Every marketing really is effective when you have a powerful story and journey behind it, and that's one thing you all definitely have. which is incredible and amazing. And it just really builds that connection. Now you talked about revenue. I know revenue is really, really important. And for any business, in order to succeed, we need to create revenue. And we always
Right.
want to give back. We want to have that philanthropy piece attached to it, for sure. And that's your whole core mission, is for these camps. But at the end of the day, we need to survive.
We got to pay for it.
Bills, right? We have bills to pay and we got to pay for it. So what are some that you said, speaking, selling things that people need? Can you talk to us about, like, when you started, what were some of the main challenges you had and how did you overcome them?
The main challenges I had 7 kids at home and no revenue. So how do you fund camps, And so I put all these things together, speaking events, book sales, putting together the movie deals, those kind of things. And so it was kind of an interesting road. And then I had this young gentleman at the time approach me with, he had access to local honey in the Corning, New York area. And so because of Corning, if you're familiar with Corning, it's a glass town. Dave's a glass. He's a legend here in Corning. So I took his logos from him pitching, catching, fielding, and batting. So he had all these I had 3 pictures, and I just made logos out of them and put it on a mason jar with a little handle. And I had a guy cut the glass. So we did a glass cut mug, and we filled it up with raw local honey. I didn't even know what my cost basis was on this stuff at this point, because we're just getting honey by the bucket. I'm having this guy fill it up one by one, kind of thing. And I didn't even know what to sell it for. And so we did our first fundraiser at the Wine Glass Marathon. We have a big wine glass marathon because it's glass, and I'm selling a glass mug and it's filled with honey and telling the story. But at that point, I'm thinking people are going to buy Dave's book that's out. We're going to buy some hats, some t-shirts that I had created. I had a little DVD, a mini documentary that was done on Dave that I packaged and put together. And you know what people really wanted? Honey. They wanted honey. And so we were set up in the traffic flow of the registration, and people were stopping. And again, I'm thinking we can sell them a book, sell them a shirt, sell them a hat. The honey sold out.
Yeah.
Like $3,000 worth of honey in a day and a half.
Wow.
Marketing it with just me and my young kids at the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how do we do more of this? So we actually started packaging this, then I had to look, okay, how do you label it? How do you make it legal? All those kind of things that I didn't really know. Fortunately, honey's not very regulated in New York. So that helped, and honey never goes bad. So it might crystallize, but it never goes bad. So I didn't have to worry about buying a bunch of product that I didn't sell. And so I started marketing it. And then before you know it, I had a connection with the Sam's Club manager and met him. And I saw people selling out in front of Sam's Clubs. And I said, hey, how do we get to do that? Told him my story. He loved us. He started sponsoring us, started giving us grants, gave us volunteers, gave me products, for my, food and stuff and all this kind of stuff. But he let us set up and start selling out in front of his Sam's Club. We did so well, I was like not wanting to tell him how well we were doing. And so we kind of created this like mini fundraising business, for suggested donation of such and such amount of money, depending on the size of the honey. But then I needed more product. So I got syrup, and I had a cheese company. One of my old clients has one of the oldest cheese companies that's nearby. And we kind of white labeled that for a while. And so I started creating all these products, and that was really the engine that helped fund us from literally having zero money to spend on this to creating revenue that almost all of it went just to doing the camps so that we can continue to make the camps free.
And who would have known it would have been food related out of everything? Right?
Instead of Girl Scout cookies, we did honey, and we did it well, and we did it for a while. COVID pretty much crashed that train. And then we had to repivot, and that's what we're doing now.
So let's talk about pivoting. It's a perfect time to pivot and talk about pivoting, because something did work really, really well. And you would have probably, if COVID didn't happen, it may still be working well. Well, one thing is it's interesting that you said that, you thought this would work, and it turned out people wanted this, which is a really key big nugget that I want to really shine the light on before we move forward in a
Sure.
Because when we are building a business or getting started, or even as we're growing, we're going from one place in our business to the next level. We usually think, oh, this is what people want. But at the end of the day, many times we'll put it out there, and then we hear crickets, because it's like all of a sudden we're realizing that, wait a minute, we were wrong, which is
Right.
okay. But so I love that you saw this and you're like, okay, we're leaning all into this. You didn't fight it. Many people will fight it and go, well, no, I know better. I know what people want because I know my business. But the people are going to tell you, and it's really important that we have our eyes and ears open to listening and asking the people, finding out what they're wanting. And you said this at the very beginning, finding out what they need or want and then providing it for them.
Right.
It's really simple, but we can, as business owners, overcomplicate that.
No, for sure. And it was kind of an interesting journey because we did this for quite a while, and my son Gideon was a big part of that fundraising. I don't even know how much honey he sold. It's probably in the seven figures over the course of time. And so, and not just honey. I mean, my children's book, all the things that we would collect a donation for it or whatever, and give people some product. We didn't necessarily put a price. We just put a price range, on our stuff. But it's amazing, because here I'm, as a senior financial advisor at Merrill Lynch at one point, and now all of a sudden I'm selling honey to Sam's Club, and people are like, "Well, why are you doing that?" Well, guess how many speaking events I got from that? Guess how many sponsors I get from that? I literally got $10,000, $15,000 speaking events because I was selling honey.
Wow.
Because I met the right person that I probably would have never met if it hadn't been for me being out there and saying, here's a little flyer. This is what we do. Here's our products. It was really well put together, high quality. We weren't, in people's faces. I trained my kids to just hey, let the people come to us. And when they do, you just tell them what we are and you show them pictures. This is what we are. It's honey for a great cause, and this is our cause. And if they walk away, it's fine. You just go on to the next one. And it's just a numbers game at that point. And so, but we were really good at communicating that. And of course, I had my children's book when it came out, and that was a big part of it. And that was getting us on stages. And so our speaking fees started going up because when you get Dave on stage, it's impactful. So, and we typically do that together, and all three of us have done it together as well. But it's typically Dave Clark and I, and he'll do a keynote, and it's just amazing. Because we're going to make you laugh, even though we're not comedians, but we have funny stories to tell. We're certainly going to make you cry, so you got to be ready to have the Kleenex in your hand. You're going to get the feels and when you hear Dave's stories, and it's going to be motivational. And in some cases, it's educational because, I mean, here's the guy that won three major league championships in the Swedish major leagues as a managing coach. He knows baseball. He knows leadership. He knows how to look at it differently, and because of the situation that he's at. And so you got the leadership training, you got the mindset training, all those kind of things that people want. That's what you're getting when you roll up. And I say literally roll up because he pulls up on his scooter and takes the mics in his hand and starts telling these great stories that we have.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I want to talk about your books and where we can find them. But before we do that, I want to talk about the pivot. So there's times to pivot, times where we need to make a decision to pivot. And then there's times where we don't have a choice to pivot. And COVID lent into the space where many people didn't have a choice to pivot, which is, I'm guessing, what happened with you.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what did you do when you were going through this transition? You're like, oh my gosh, okay, what was working is no longer working. Obviously, we can't do things the same way. What did you do, and what were some challenges you faced there, and how did you move through those?
The challenges were significant. From all intents and purposes, we shouldn't even be talking anymore. I should be doing something else. From a perspective, we should have thrown in the towel. I mean, even the challenges, it was almost like we were not quite at we felt like we were at the top of the mountain and it was going to start rolling. People were calling us. Teams were calling us. How do we get you to do our program? Speakers, speaking events were calling us and say, hey, what's the fee? Not do you charge? So those things were really changing. And we even signed a big movie deal. We thought it was going to be a big movie deal at that time. And 3 weeks later, you couldn't even walk around because they shut down the world. And of course, it shut down, where the big stores could stay open, but we weren't allowed to do what we did anymore. We weren't allowed to market our product because we weren't allowed to set up. It wasn't safe. Whatever, all the COVID restrictions, especially in New York, and even in Florida at the point. We got shut down in Florida as well. And so and then for speaking events, there wasn't events. Is somebody going to pay you $10,000 to do a Zoom? We got 5,000 once, and maybe 3,000 another time, but that's really hard sales. I mean, that's hard sales to get somebody to pay you I don't care what your story is, whatever. It's pretty difficult. So almost all of our revenue source just literally went to nothing. And then at the same time, the Amazons of the world started doing better, and even folks that are my age and older started learning how to order things online. So the traffic at our local malls and the traffic at the certain retails things that we did and the events that we did, it went on a third or a quarter of what it used to be. So for us to do all that same amount of work, we couldn't get the same amount of return. And so the pivot came in almost literally getting destroyed. And so I had to dig back. We started doing podcasts. I started doing more. The one good thing is we were able to do the Zoom, started meeting people, started trying to get to in-person meetings. And then it was like putting the different packages together and then coming up with things like the Dugout Movement and my D3 Day Hall of Fame, and, putting a little more effort on the sponsorship side, which we didn't do as much of that prior to COVID because we had our own products to sell. Sponsors would just come out of, oh, I'd like to be a part of that. And I said, well, we'll put your logo on a shirt and a sign, for XYZ money. And but if you want to be a bigger sponsor, you can be a bigger sponsor. But I didn't go out and promote that as hard because we had a different revenue source. And so I had to put that together and figure out, how do you get a bigger sponsor? How do you get a corporation involved that's going to pay and have their employees there, a part of this event, getting shirts, getting hats, feeding everybody, having almost like instead of a picnic, do a disability dream and do a sports camp with us. And so now packaging that, spinning it out, creating the revenue, and that's where the Dugout Movement and this Doug Dog, I was approached of how do we get that revenue stream going, but use the whole world as our market. And so and both selling digital dogs as well as physical dogs. And so that's where we're in the process of that pivot.
Amazing. So can you share with us in the where you are currently? Let's talk about now. As far as, because you're the marketing genius behind your organization.
Genius or fool, I don't know. You take your pick.
Genius. We're going with genius.
All right, we'll go with genius.
So what are you doing now? You've shared some things, but what's really working, like doubling down, like just looking back on your journey, picking up the phone really worked. Like you called Dave and then you called Dave. Like those were two major phone calls in your life that transformed a lot.
Yeah.
And so what are the things now that are working for you as far as visibility goes? I know you're on podcasts, so that's obviously helping and supporting. But marketing wise, there's different ways that work for different organizations and companies: paid, organic, social media, conferences, in-person events, media like podcasts, things like that.
Right.
Picking up the phone, is that still something that's working, or is like, are you leaning more toward cold outreach now? Like, what is working for you? And on the flip side, what are some things that you've done that maybe you're like, that didn't give us the ROI we had hoped for?
Yeah, so there's definitely that. There's things that didn't give me the ROI that we'd hoped for, some strategies that we do. And I don't think they were necessarily bad strategies. I think we're just in a market where there's not a lot of extra money. The money has been locked down. And I don't want to use that as an excuse, but I can feel it because people's like, yeah, they want to give me, and I'll even talk to people that have been very successful in the past, and they're trying to not get foreclosed on, and so I've just run into a lot more of that, and I'm hoping that 2026, the doors start opening up, money starts spending, whether it's the interest rates coming down or whatever is going to create that confidence in the market again, because people do want to do good. And so I've just had to pivot to talking to more people, networking. I'm a part of a fairly strong networking group. I'm best, even though I feel like I'm big and ugly and I'm 6'2" and I'm not young anymore and all those kind of things, but I'm still best when I actually meet with people, and phone works sometimes, but it's hard to get the quick close on a phone. It's just simply hard. Zoom is good. I prefer a Zoom meeting. I stay a little more focused and they can stay a little more focused, so that the whole world being open to us and the networking side, but still a lot of the people that are willing to Zooms with us are the people that are trying to sell me, not the other way around. And so I have to find the people that say, you know what, I want you to learn about what I'm doing. Are you interested in being a part of that and having more of those conversations? So the networking, training my network referral partners to really say, with this, I'd rather have a meeting like this than 5 like this. And so, and being willing to just be out there, Searching for getting some more referrals, trying to get back on stages more. That's a big part of what I'm trying to do. So, I'm asking, say, hey, I'm looking for good referrals that would want to sponsor, DEI and DIB executives, diversity, inclusion, and belonging executives. That's a good one for me. Somebody that's a marketing, that's spending money on marketing. That's a really good one for me right now because we're trying to tie in the exposure, because last year, I don't know how many millions of hits we got on social media, but we've gotten millions and millions of hits. And I can show, hey, this is where we got the million hits. So when you market with us, we can help you be a part of that, your brand's a part of that, et cetera. And so more of that, setting the stage, building us back up to the point where, they're going to want to say, here's not just 1,000, here's not just 5,000, but here's 30,000, here's 150,000, here's 250,000, and that's the steps that I'm approaching. Where it's great to get the $1,000, it's great to get the $2,000, it's great to get the $5,000, but what I really want to get is the 30,000 and up kind of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah. I mean, every bit helps, right?
Right,
But those
absolutely.
big chunks really can make bigger impact and differences quicker.
Or millions of people doing $15 on our
Exactly.
campaign
Yeah.
for Doug the dog and
Yes.
the campaign that we're doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about your books. Tell us about them, what inspired them, what are they called, and where can we get them, Doug?
So probably the best place to get them is to go to pullingeachotheralong.com because I've pulled my children's book off of Amazon because they take all the money.
Okay.
And it's a fundraiser for us. So it's
Yeah.
like, why should I share 55% of it with Amazon? So
Right.
that's just my take on it. So my children's book was inspired, and I'm involved in this story, but if I can take you back for a minute to 1958, before you and I were born.
Mhm.
Okay. Dave was a 6-year-old in first grade. All right. He was mainstreamed into a little school in Corning, New York, where my granddaughter literally is right now, at the Hugh Gregg School. And so he was mainstreamed. And up until he went to school in the neighborhood, he didn't really feel different. The kids were used to him. His brothers picked on him. If he needed to get beat up, he got beat up. I mean, that was, back in the 50s. And when we did stuff like that, if we got in a fight over a baseball game or whatever, you just worked it out on the field and then you were best friends two seconds later. And so, but when Dave went to school, that's when he said, I was made to feel different. The phys ed teachers didn't even let him participate in phys ed. They would set up a chair for him to sit and watch. So his classmates would be having all this fun, whatever the activity was. Dave was conditioned to just go find his chair and sit. So he did that up until third grade. But in first grade, now feeling he's different, and bullying was also not new. They called him Oleo, which rhymed with polio, which he didn't like, and they picked on him at recess and pinned him up against the fences. He said at times they would like build a wall where he couldn't move, and they wouldn't let him move, and just little things like that. That obviously ingrained in his brain that he never forgot. So when the first grade teacher announces a field trip, that's exciting, right? Hey, we're going to go to field trip to the fire hall, except for one little thing that was not very fun for Dave. It was to walk there. And it was about 5 blocks away. And it's this old fire hall building. And Dave, everybody else is excited about going to the fire hall in 1958, not having to go to school, not being in class that day and being out on the street. But for Dave, it was just complete anxiety. And he remembers about 1 to 2 weeks. He doesn't know exactly of just how long he had to wait for this event to come. But he said every day his anxiety grew and grew and grew to the point where morning came, tries to fake his mother out, and, Mom, I'm sick, cough, 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 kind of thing. And she's like, Dave, you're not sick. Get your braces on and you get ready to go to school. You're not going to be late, kind of person. So he's off to school, sitting in the his chair, and the teacher finally calls the class to get to the field trip. So everybody get in line, it's time to go. Dave's last mode of defense was to go to the back of the line. Because maybe the kids will go out in front of him, and he'll just try to catch up. Maybe they won't look back. And with all this anxiety built up, a classmate of his named Ernie Pound had brought his radio flyer wagon to school that day to pull him. And Dave never forgot it. And so where I come in to this story is that Dave has a book called The Diamond in the Rough, which is available on Amazon. It's also available, in kind of bundles on our website. But this Diamond in the Rough, the Dave Clark story, in chapter 2, he's got it titled My Saviors, kind of like the small S, the people that saved him. It's a great story about his phys ed teacher. It's a great story about his dad. And he shared the story that I just shared with you about this Ernie Pound bringing his radio flyer wagon to school. And he literally says to Ernie in the book, thank you from the bottom of my heart, not even knowing where Ernie was in life at this point. He just never forgot it. So if you go back to the beginning of, if you're listening this long to this podcast, if you go back to the beginning, I have a son that's born with no arms. I had gotten to know Dave, and I said, Dave, you got to get a book out there. And I was kind of pushing him. So he got with a local sports writer, wrote this book. I was helping him like package the pre-books, sending it out to some publicists and doing all those kind of things for him. He even thanks me in that book just to help him out kind of as a sideline. But in chapter 2, he tells that story. And when the books finally got finished, I set up 5 book signings for him because I already had the marketing engine going because we were doing seminars and things like that with Merrill Lynch. So I did the same thing to do that, but I got people to show up at his book signings. People know him. I got him on the radio. I think we did the news as well, because it's a smaller local town. And so people were coming to his book signings. And during that time, it was a 2 or 3 day stretch where we had this book signing set up. I was rereading his chapter before we were going on to a radio show the next day. And I was rereading the book, reread that story, get the goosebumps. And I go, I got to find Ernie Pound. I got to see if he's around. Awkward phone call from my Merrill Lynch phone. It probably said Merrill Lynch right there on the caller ID back then. And I call an Ernst Pound that I found in the phone book living about 45 minutes away. And he came to the phone. You could tell he didn't want to talk to me. And I was telling him, I'm looking for an Ernie Pound. I don't know if that's your granddad, your dad, or whatever. I don't know what your situation is. And I'm looking for an Ernie Pound who went to first grade in Corny, New York, who brought a radio flyer wagon to school to help a classmate. And all of a sudden he goes, I remember the wagon. It was my sister's wagon. He remembered the wagon, had no idea about Dave because the family had left the area after first grade, and Dave and he had not seen each other for 45 years.
Wow.
He comes to a book signing with his teenage son. I give him a book. I saw him come through the door. I knew it was him. I give him a book. These weren't even my books to give away at this point, but I'm just like, Dave's going to want you to have one of these. He gets in line. It was a pretty long line at this coffee shop. Finally gets to Dave, and Dave says, who should I sign this to? And he says, sign this one to Ernie Pound. And I have that on video if you want to get all emotional again. I have little clips, and we post it from time to time. So Dave and I started telling that story quite often. The first time he ever told the story was in Orlando at the Peabody at a sports conference. You could have heard a pin drop. And I mean, you could have heard a pin drop. Dave gets super emotional. This is the first time we've ever shared it publicly. And what gets him emotionally is sharing the reunion.
Yeah.
That's what always gets him. And when we do keynotes together, I typically share the reunion part now, and he shares the story part. And so we started doing that. We actually created an award called the Pulling Each Other Along Award that we give out at our camps. So to tie all this together, we look for unsung heroes like Ernie Pound. Ernie, of course, has one of these awards now, and we give this award out to people that are helping those, typically in the disability world. And so we give them that award. We they're on field. It's a beautiful little wooden plaque. And so we were doing that for a while. And then I said, we got to write this children's book. And I was trying to find a big author to write it. Nobody would write it, because I don't really consider myself a writer. I'm a creative, but not really a writer. Finally, I got with the children's book, said, we'll help you write it. And I said, well, I'll write it. They rewrote it. And, we back and forth. But I do come out of the children's entertainment industry. So I knew what I was looking for to put this together. And found this great illustrator, Mark Barrere, and we put together, if you can see it, a book called A Pound of Kindness, in honor of Ernie Pound. And so I love this book. I'm a little biased to how good it is because it's my book, but the impact of that story is so significant. It's almost more significant to the adults than it is to the children. And so I call it the children's book for adults. So if you're an adult saying, I want that story, then yeah, go get it. And then read it to your grandkids, read it to your kids, whatever it is. And so that's a big part of it's, it's very near and dear to my heart. And then that particular book during COVID, you have to have something to do. So we wrote a book adding 30 more stories called Pulling Each Other Along, which is also, this one's on Amazon, one at a time, or you can buy it through our website. And what we did is we just started talking to all these celebrities that we had gotten to know in the disability world, sports world. Dave Stevens has got a chapter in there. Well, Terry Bradshaw, if you're familiar with him, he wrote the foreword. And so we have these people that you may or may not know in some cases, or may know of them when you hear the story again, talking about their chapters, talking about what pulled them along in their life. That's the focus, just like what Ernie Pound did to Dave. And so we're chapter one. Pretty famous football player from the Pittsburgh Steelers is chapter two. Rocky Blyer, for those Pittsburgh Steeler fans out there. Rocky, I got to meet Rocky at the Super Bowl several years ago. And then he was the first person I called up and said, "Hey, Rocky, you want to be in my book?" And calls me back and he goes, "Yeah, I'll do it." I'm like, "Oh, that was easier." And it's usually not that easy. So,
Yeah.
especially with a celebrity like him, I mean, he's had a television movie made of him and all that kind of stuff in the past. So that's been the journey. It's kind of been a crazy roller coaster journey. It's not been easy. It's certainly a privilege, even when the checkbook's low. It's a privilege. When you go to a camp like I do and you have upwards of 100, 110, 115 children and young adults with different disabilities playing baseball with pro athletes, and just the whole thing that we put together, there's not a lot of standing around at our camps. There's a lot of cheering, there's a lot of high fives, there's a lot of balls flying everywhere. It's all soft equipment, you know, and these kids get the time of their life with these players, but the impact on the players is so significant. And then the parents is significant, the volunteers is significant, the sponsors that help us, if they're there especially, it's significant. And we just create these moments of magic for these kids and these young adults and these parents, and we just want to do more of it. And so we're on that path of getting that revenue stream going again, and through Doug the Dog and through some more speaking events. Now that that's starting to open up again, we're in line to get a couple, and hopefully those fall through for us and fall through in a good way. And then we got our Dave Stevens, and he's out there doing his own thing as well. And he comes to these camps. He's a major, major, major inspiration. Born with no legs, just the real short version of his story at this point. Born with no legs, 3-sport athlete in high school and college, 2-time state champion wrestler in high school in Wickenburg, Arizona. Dave had a short stint to play for the St. Paul Saints. He's in a movie right now on Netflix called Saints with Second Chances with Mike Vick. And Dave went to ESPN for 20 years, and he's a 7-time Emmy Award winner.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've got not just one incredible Dave, I got 2 incredible Daves.
And Doug the Dog.
And now Doug the Dog, and then Dave and Davey the Dog too, or Dig and Dude, or whatever we name it. Or maybe people can help us name that. We might actually have a contest. I think
you should. That would be a great way to get more. Also, bring in more exposure, bring in more visibility.
Well, I'll tell you what we're launching. I'll tell you what we're launching with Doug the Dog is we're going to do a digital version first, where people will have their own whatever digital that's just to them. It's going to be a unique digital Doug the Dog, hopefully branded with, I'm not going to say the names that we're going after right now, but hopefully branded with some small and big companies. And then we're doing a contest where people will have to pay a little bit of money, not too much, and they'll get to a contest to enter to design the ball. And come up with all these creative things to design the ball. And then the winner is we're going to make that ball.
I love it.
And then that'll be part of the marketing. And the winner is actually, the plan is they'll actually share in the revenue.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the golden ticket that we're trying to promote. So that's in the works. So I don't know when this is coming out, but hopefully the dugout movement. We've got lots of proposals on that, all those kind of things. So depending on how quick this comes out, they can get with me and say, yeah, I'd love to market with that, because it's going to get seen. It's going to get seen.
Well, this is coming. We're in January, end of January right now. So I'll get with you offline here, and we'll chat about when this would be a good time to put out that you're doing this event, so that maybe we can support you in getting more people involved, because it sounds like a great way to donate, also to give, to
contribute. That's a
have some fun along the way and in a contest. So I'm all about that. So I would love to help you in any way we can with that. So I want to be respectful of your time, Doug. So before I let you go, can you share with us how we can find out more about you, more about the organization, as well as grab the books? I know there's 2 different websites. We'll also have all of your social media and everything, but I want people to have a way to connect with you.
Yeah.
If they want to reach out, and also, if somebody's like, I want to donate now.
Donate now, D3 Day, go to our donate tab, and you can go right to the Southwest Florida Community Foundation. It holds all our donations. That goes to the D3 Day Fund. That's for straight up donations. If they more want to partner with me, sponsor with us, there is a sponsor page. We have different camps that are coming up. I'm still scheduling those right now. Fort Myers, since you're in Florida, Fort Myers is already scheduled for April 18th and 19th for that particular event. That's with the Twins organization. So I'm looking for sponsorships, but the best thing to do is go to our sponsorship page and just book a meeting with me on Zoom. And then I'll share, hey, we have this level, this level, this level, this level, if you want to go to all those kind of things. So definitely looking for people to help us get these, or if they want to bring D3 Day to their area. Like we have teams in West Palm that would want us, in Fort Lauderdale. We just haven't had the funding to do it, but we are looking for the Clearwaters. If there's any Philadelphia Philly fans out there, we're trying to put together a big package with the Phillies right now. We did a great event with them last year in New Jersey and their Jersey Shore team, and the manager loves us, and so I'm working with him. He just sent me last night. I don't have. He sent me a long quote. I asked him for a quote, and he sent me this long quote about Disability Dream and Do from our event with him this past summer, and how important it was not just to the participants in the community, but also to his players.
Well, make sure that if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform or you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. We appreciate you. Please share this episode out with anyone, which should be everyone that would benefit from learning more about D3 Day. And you can go to d3day.com if this has inspired you, like, I want to donate. There's no amount too little. Go donate. Go watch out for everything that Doug has shared with you, and go connect with him, and go grab the books. And we have all of the links inside of the show notes. So where do we get the books again, Doug?
Best one is pullingeachotheralong.com right now. Yeah,
okay.
pullingeachotheralong.com.
And then the website is D3 Day. So it's D, the letter D as in Doug, Dave, and then the number 3, and then day.com.
Yep. And then I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn, Doug Cornfield on LinkedIn. Yep.
Well, thank you, Doug. Before we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to share before I let you go?
I think you let me share enough, probably. It's long-winded. I'm usually not short-winded, but we have so many things to share, and I have so many stories. Posting a lot at D3 Day on Instagram and also on Facebook. YouTube, we have the D3 Day Dugout Movement page, and so we're trying to get that up. So like those things, all that kind of stuff, and that's a big help as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you for being here, Doug. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for listening to us today and being here with Doug and I. Go check it out. It's amazing, this organization. Learn more and stay tuned for the upcoming contests. They may be happening now as we're putting out this podcast. So go check that out for sure. And wishing you all an amazing rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Business Growth Spotlight.